This is Bill from the Past Our Prime podcast. We hope you're enjoying our talk with the wonderfully insightful Kirkpatrick. Now, we usually try and edit these things down, but with Curry, he's just too interesting. So we decided to have an extra session with him. Some bonus time, if you will. So enjoy a little more of our talk with Kirkpatrick on the Past Our Prime podcast.
But you did say something a few minutes ago. Tell me about your relationship with Bill Walton. What was it about him, you and him, that were so close?
That's a whole nother cover we should do.
Okay. Yeah.
But I knew Bill as a sophomore at UCLA. I mean, that's how far back I go, and I was doing big stories on him back then because, as a freshman, you guys probably remember this. I mean, nobody knew who Bill Walton was as a freshman. People have come out this after his death and said he was a big, amazing high school star, and I mean he was a star, but in San Diego, but nobody that year. Tom McMillan,
Right.
who went to Maryland, he
Right.
was the big high school player of the year. We had him on the cover, as a matter of fact, and so he was the guy everybody knew about. And so when Walton exploded on the scene as a sophomore, they went undefeated and won the championship. That's when I got to know him. And for some reason, I mean, I had written some negative things about him even before that, but for some reason, he took to me. In fact, the stories I would do early on, Wooden was very protective of Walton. And of course, he wouldn't let him speak to the press as a freshman, wouldn't let him do any press conferences at all. And of course, Bill had a stuttering problem still then. He was trying to, he had a horrible stuttering problem growing up, but he was getting over it in those days. But still, Wooden was protected. So the first time he really spoke to the national press was at the post-game press conference after they beat Florida State in the championship game. That's the first time really the national press got to see, and even me, I did not do a story on him during the year. I briefly talked to him, coming out of the locker room, but Wooden had his rule. And so I don't know how much you want to get into this, but so the first time I saw him was at this press conference, and he was very, very nasty. I mean, he just won the national championship, and he didn't want to talk to anybody still, and he hadn't played well. And of course, he was this great perfectionist, so he thought his performance didn't live up to what he should have done. And people were asking him questions, and he was answering, and he was kind of surly and kind of defensive, and kind of he kind of was looking down at this whole thing. And I don't know who I was with at the time, but we're sitting in our chairs going, who is this guy as a freshman to look down on the national media? I mean, he really did. And I wrote something about it was he seemed annoyed, and it was a childish. I think I called him childish. And his last words to the press in that conference was, "Do I have to do any more questions?" And the NCAA guy said, "No, that's all, Bill." And he kind of walked away being surly. It was amazing for, this is a young freshman.
Right, 19.
Time of his life, and he was like sneering at this. And I kind of wrote that in the story. So that was my first thing. So the next year, I go back, he's a sophomore, and Wooden still didn't want him to talk to me. He kind of told the guy, because at that time, I was doing this big story on, we call them the Walton Gang, and it was about mid-season. Yeah. And they were still unbeaten, and nobody knew who these guys were really nationally. So I went out and we did a kind of a small profile on each player in the team. So I got to know each player and did this thing. And Walton kind of let me in. In fact, he and Greg Lee told me to go to that drugstore, that combined drugstore restaurant. That I can't remember the name of the guy. It was a guy's name. And it was in Westwood. It was this famous gathering place. All the UCLA people went there. Hollis something. You remember the name of this? Are you guys LA guys?
Oh, we are,
I'm trying to remember too.
But Mark should have this.
I should.
But he doesn't.
You probably should be there.
I bowled in Westwood in the early 70s.
I'm sure you've been there. So Walton said, "Look, come around to the back door by the kitchen, and Greg and I'll talk to you," because he didn't want any of these all these UCLA people hanging around to see him talking to me, because he wasn't supposed to, because of Wooden. So, and he kind of introduced me to all the guys, and I did this story, and then my relationship with Wooden was kind of off and on, but from then on, Wooden really treated me very well. I mean, he was great to me, and I would come out. We made him Sportsman of the Year one year. We also made Chris Evert Sportswoman of the Year, by the way.
That's right. Right.
Later on.
She might have been the first one.
By the way,
Well, I think Billie Jean King was the first one because
Oh, okay. Okay.
Billie Jean and Wooden, we made them co-sports person of the year, and that was the first. And I did that story, and we got them together. I did an interview with Billie Jean King and John Walton together.
Oh, my gosh.
My gosh.
John Wooden together, so it was very cool.
I imagine.
To get back to Chris, to this day, I mean, my daughter, who had met Chris, as I said, when she was 10 years old, my daughter became a junior tennis player. And of course, Chris was her idol and growing up. And now my daughter is married with 4 children in Boston. And Chris, I called her last year, and Chelsea was doing this. She was getting stuff donated to this school for a race they were doing for cancer. And Chris donated, tennis shirts and caps and rackets and stuff to Chelsea's form. So it was really, it's really cool that we still keep in touch and still close.
Yeah.
And Walton, same way.
by the way, it was the Westwood drugstore was Hollis Johnson's.
Hollis
it was the
Johnson.
it was the restaurant in the back of the drugstore.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, the drugstore and a restaurant. Yeah, it was very weird. But Bill, I don't know. Bill, I was texting with Bill up till 2 weeks before he died, and I was stunned that he had cancer. I think everybody was, even his closer friends than me. Jim Gray, for instance, had some great stories. I heard him on the radio, and Jim Gray didn't even know he had cancer. And Jim Gray, as a reporter, was the one that Bill always said saved his life, because he got Walton when Walton was in really one of his bad states. His feet were gone, and he couldn't walk, he couldn't stand basically. And Jim Gray got his own doctors. He got Walton to see his own doctors, who basically came up with something that cured Bill. So they were that close.
Yeah, we had Larry Farmer on last week, and he didn't know. I mean, Bill kept that matter to himself.
He did.
Right.
And he has every right to have done so, yeah.
Well, listen to this. Let's get back to Larry Farmer. So I became really close with Larry Farmer, of course, when he played. Then I married a girl named Marianne Brannigan. Is that Irish enough for you?
Yeah.
I married Marianne Brannigan, and she was from Denver. She was from Denver, and we started going out, long distance, and got to know her. It turns out that she taught Larry Farmer in high school.
Oh, wow, in Denver? Wow.
Amazing. It was amazing. She taught Larry Farmer at what was his name? Smiley Junior High School in Denver.
Wow.
And so now later on, now it's many years later, and it's funny, this comes up now. We were in France, Marion and I, and we were staying at the Adidas place, because they have this big hotel for traveling. They're traveling Adidas teams going from soccer teams going from Europe to the U.S. and blah blah blah, and a lot of their Adidas clients come and stay in the hotel when they're in the south of France, and so we were staying there, and who else was staying there but Larry Farmer and his agent Sam Gilbert.
Oh my God.
They were staying there because they were going around Europe together or something. I don't know. So one night we're out to dinner. Together at this chalet, which was, 20 miles away from the hotel that we were both staying in. So we're driving back, and Sam Gilbert is driving. Larry Farmer's in the front seat. And my wife and I are in the back seat, and we have Chelsea, who's about 1 years old, 2 years old, in Marianne's lap. And Sam Gilbert was had some drinks, and he was going, side to side on the road. And this is a true story. He goes to the right, and he tips over. The car tips over on the side of the road.
Oh, no.
One car accident. He goes off the side of the road and crashes. And it crashed luckily to the right, and my wife and my baby came onto my body, and so nobody was hurt. It was incredible. Nobody was hurt. We get out of the car. We're out in the middle of nowhere, and we start walking because we're in the middle of nowhere. It's like 10 o'clock at night, and this is all true. We finally found a farmhouse, and we go there, and we, report the accident, and the guy helps us, and we go back to the hotel. But that's my Larry Farmer story with Sam and Gil.
Wow.
Man, so
Unbelievable stories.
right?
I
Right? He's like, oh, well, Bill Walton's my the other friend. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
I mean, we throw fish out, and Curry takes it down the river. He's like,
Yeah.
okay.
I came out of nowhere with that. I'm sorry. I didn't.
No.
No, you
no,
know,
it was
it's,
great.
it's like you're this great chef. We give you like 2 ingredients, and then you whip up this unbelievable dish.
When Bill died, I was on a couple of shows and stuff giving reminiscence, and I thought then, and I've never thought of this before, but I thought then he's the closest athlete I've ever got to, no question. And then you brought up Chris now, and of course she is even closer to her, so that's kind of cool.
That is so cool. So are you, my friend.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Curry,
much,
you
Curry.
are the best.
Appreciate
the best.
it.
I see your name on any podcast, I listen.